Yes, I'm Kristen Muller, and I have been at KPCC for about 10 years. And I oversee podcasting, local news website, the newsroom, and our radio station. Caitlin.
Hi, everyone. As I was mentioned, my name is Caitlin. My pronouns are they, them. And I've been at KPCC for a little over a year now, heading into my second as an on-call assistant producer for the engagement team.
So I'll just do some very quick facts about our organization. We actually have 3 different brands under one roof: or radio station, which is the NPR affiliate for LA, LAist, which is our local news site, and LAist Studios, which is our podcast studio. And our main focus is Southern California. There are 17 million people in Southern California, so we actually do most of our reporting around LA County, which is 10 million people. And we have 80,000 members across those 3 brands, although the majority come in over the radio, where membership and pledge drives are kind of mainstays of the public media brand. So we are still very much in the experimental stages in terms of membership strategy with our podcasts and our local news website, which doesn't have any NPR content on it. But across all 3 brands, community engagement is really key to our success. And what I mean by community engagement is it's kind of a broad umbrella term we used as shorthand for really narrowing the gap between our newsroom and the communities we're trying to serve. It takes many different forms, and what we'll be focusing on in this session is really our use of GroundSource, the texting tool, and Hearken, which allows readers to ask us questions. We also, of course, have like the old school radio call-in shows where people can call in and ask questions too. But membership and community engagement are so critical because more than 50% of our funding comes from individual donors. We have about 90 journalists in our content department, and what's also notable is that includes our community engagement team. Community engagement has never been part of marketing. It doesn't work for the membership department, and it doesn't refer to the social media team either. It's really a group of folks who are dedicated to making sure the feedback loop between the communities we're trying to serve in the newsroom are strong, robust, and resulting in better journalism. The second slide. Thanks. So community engagement is not really a new thing for us. We've been practicing it for more than 4 years. Began in earnest in 2015 when we started a tech service that explained how to participate in elections. And then it evolved pretty quickly into a strong tool that we were using during breaking news. In 2019, we had massive wildfires out in Southern California. And to date, the engagement effort had been kind of a small group of people who were practicing it regularly. But in 2019, it was like an aha moment. Everyone in the room, the reporters, the hosts, everyone kind of understood the urgency of getting information to people who needed it in the way that they needed it. And we applied it to this fire coverage, and we really saw community needs in real time from people who were, in the evacuation zone and didn't have accurate maps, to people who were breathing in really filthy air and wanted to know what the best masks were. And that, I think, was like a light switch for the room, because people understood that not only could we really be of service, but we could have a direct one-on-one relationship with our readers and listeners. And for that effort, we got a Murrah Award for innovation, which again was another, I think, big boost for the room. And I'm just giving this as background so that you understand, by the time the pandemic hit, we really didn't need to convince anyone in the room that being responsive to audience questions was, as you would call it, a memberful routine. Not all the people asking questions were members, of course, but I think people really felt the impact immediately of being helpful. And so when the pandemic hit, we were in position both with the teams and as a mindset to respond, although one editor who had not been involved in community engagement efforts up to that point remarked to the whole room that she said, "I think we've just become LA's help desk." And that really stuck. I think everyone that really, all of a sudden we could relate to that idea. And it was really all hands on deck. But as Caitlin will tell you, even with all that prep and infrastructure in place, we were not prepared for the volume of questions that came our way.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about what the help desk is. So this is the work, as Kristen explained, that KPCC has led with a small team, personally answering more than 7,000 community questions during COVID-19. And we get those through email and text using Harkin and Ground Source. Essentially, team members sign on to a question in the spreadsheet that we keep, answer it, and flag potential stories to reporters and editors. Now managing 7,000 questions can be a lot, obviously, for trying to do one by one. As we've scaled, we found that a workflow which brings in the newsroom is central to delivering informed answers and thoughtful reporting. So for example, with questions that are more complicated to answer, say for example, a school district's particular response or method to the pandemic, a team member connects with our education reporters to facilitate that informed response. If it is an answer role, we make sure we do three things. We let the community member know, so we respond back, flag as potential coverage if it's part of a larger trend that we're seeing in questions, and we monitor to follow up because it's also always good to circle back and close that loop. A third thing that we also want to point out is that all of this is accessible to the entire KPCC newsroom in a Google spreadsheet that's updated daily. So during bigger waves of questions, our team has used staggered schedules, so working evenings and weekends. And we also send a weekly overview of question trends to our content teams when the peaks are really high. So we can understand the information that we're getting. And then the fourth thing we do is at times we've really had a lot of questions roll in. We received nearly 10 questions per minute at points. And then when the vaccine rollout started, we received 1,000 questions in just a week. So it isn't always sustainable to answer these peaks one by one. And I want to make sure that's very clear, is that we point that out, but we've been able to broaden our scope by keeping a few things in mind. As I mentioned, this desk is managed by only a few people on a rotating basis, which I want to highlight, but I also want to give credit to the folks who have served here. So everyone in this photo has served on the engagement team at one point or another throughout the pandemic. But this is also the result of years of building and community engagement. Right now, the help desk is run mainly by only a person day, but because we've shrunk. So as our team has changed, we've continued to scale by keeping 2 points going that are manageable regardless of the amount of people you have available. Our first point, our priority is now mainly trend identification, meaning we look at the questions over time to understand where community members are gravitating towards. For example, one trend that came out of a wave of vaccination questions was confusion over how to get the second dose for the COVID-19 vaccine, which was answered as a reported story. This approach has guided KPCC's reporting to some of our best performing virtual events and stories ever. So I want to make sure I take a moment to highlight a few of those. We have this about how COVID-19 cases are influenced by testing. We have a massive guide that covers unemployment benefits for our state. And early on in the pandemic, this story gained a lot of traffic about how funerals would look during COVID that was sparked via questions. And the second thing we maintain is additionally, instead of responding one by one, we've changed our focus to responding in bulk. So this helps us maintain trust by responding with comprehensive information based on multiple questions along the same thing. So while people may not be getting a one-by-one response, they're still getting the information that they need, which is ultimately, what the purpose we want to serve. And with that, I will hand it to Kristen to talk more about our AI work.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think there were a lot of things we learned over the pandemic year. We had so many questions coming in, as Caitlin noted at one time, that it was really almost impossible to manually, tease out themes that we could forward to the newsroom that would be helpful for, getting ahead of some of these questions. And so we were very fortunate in that John Keefe, who was at the time at Quartz and now is at the New York Times, reached out and said, hey, if you guys need some help with this, I could apply natural language processing to these questions and kind of figure out like what buckets people are asking questions in. Now, I have no idea how this actually works. I just say like, we did an experiment with AI and we gave him all the questions, and in return, he put things into to different categories. And what was really also interesting was that we could kind of trace the pandemic over time, in that the first wave of questions was really like, the beginning of March. Should I go to this event? Should I get on a plane? To, as Caitlin noted, somebody in my family just died. Should we have a funeral? To all the way up till today, actually, like, where do I get tests? Because the testing sites have closed down, and yet now we're getting all these Delta variant questions. So you could kind of see like it went from like fear to getting deeper into mask technology, and so it was really helpful. Anyway, we are now looking for ways to operationalize this so we can reduce the amount of manual work and serve more people in bulk. Not sure how we're going to do that, but that's really the next step for us. And it's so important that we do this because out of people who received answers to the questions, which were in the thousands, 50% of those people signed up for a newsletter. And newsletter conversions are the most promising path in terms of membership for us right now. We see a very high conversion rate from people who open the newsletter, click through it, and then eventually donate. So we feel like this is not just a great strategy to be closer to the community needs, but also really to accelerate membership in new ways. And I think that's it for us.